It was inspired by the movie Seabiscuit, my getting of a goat as a companion for Castagna, and it was divinely orchestrated. There were a few steps to it. First, a friend posted a picture on Facebook of a young, wormy-bellied puppy in need of a home, Augie. It had been 2.5 years since Max passed, and up to that point, I hadn't even considered another dog. But this one grabbed my attention, and I thought it couldn't hurt to go look. He was up in the small town of Lyle, Washington, so I went to see. Also in Lyle, there was an old-time gas station whose attendant was Steve. Steve used to run a gas station in Stevenson also for years, and was known to have a sundry of animals in the office: goats, cats, dogs, seems like maybe various birds too. On the day I went to see the puppy, I stopped for gas and to say hello to Steve and whatever animal friends he had. Well, he happened to have some baby goats. I didn't realize quite yet that the Seabiscuit goat was working in the back of my mind, but I did have a particular fondness for the little black one with white stripes on her face. Meanwhile, I went to look at the puppy and knew that there was no walking myself back from him. But he was only 7 weeks old. He had been pawned off by some kids traveling through for a pack of jerky and $25. Considering his breed, I wanted him to have some socializing time with my friend's dogs, as she was an excellent dog trainer, especially with the bully breeds. So we decided he'd stay there for a couple of weeks. And during that time, I realized that a baby goat might be the perfect option for Castagna, who was not able to be with my other horses. She was extremely aggressive due to the lack of proper socialization as a young orphan foal. But that's another story. So when it came time for Augie to come home to me, I asked my friend if she would mind picking up a little goat kid on her way. And that's how it started. It's worth noting that I did no research about goats beforehand. I didn't even have a proper goat pen quite set up for her. And the first big hurdle came the day she arrived with Augie, because she was immediately wanting to headbutt and bite me at 3 months old. I could have understood being a little distraught about the new environment, but her level of anxiety was pretty out of proportion. I checked in with Steve and found out that the herd of goats she just left had been being attacked by coyotes, and some kids had been lost. And here I had just had her transported with the dog. So I made her a cozy spot in one of the big barn stalls and spent lots of time just hanging out until she felt comfortable with me. Next, I invited the family, who talked to her and gave her treats, or tried. Finally, I reintroduced to Augie. It took me a week, and after that, Lorraine and Augie were best friends. We took lots of walks, sometimes down to the local store. Lorraine was far better on the leash than Augie and helped me teach him how. People loved to see the little brindle pity pup with the goat in the pink collar, and often took pictures. Of course, the biggest and most influential introduction came when I took Lorraine to meet Castagna. Considering Castagna's trauma history and unpredictable behavior, I had no idea how she would react. But when she saw me approach the fence with Lorraine, she ran over and sniffed her up and down through the fence. We hung out with her for a few minutes, and when I started to take Lorraine away, Castagna flipped her lid. She ran around squealing and kicking and whinnying. She had instantly bonded with Lorraine, and that bond lasted Lorraine's lifetime and beyond. So I set Lorraine up in a proper goat pen next to Castagna, and it worked great. Even better was that when I would go to work during the day, I put Augie in with Lorraine, and they would spend the day together. I had initially worried how it would work during the winter weather, but on the first cold day I came home to find Augie and Lorraine curled up together in the bed of hay and shavings. I didn't have to worry again. As they grew up, they played and played, which was great, except goats and puppies play differently. Augie's type of play was grabbing her front legs with his mouth. One day that play got too rough. I heard a squeal and saw that Lorraine had a small scratch. It was nothing to speak of as for severity, but it was the end of letting the two of them hang out unsupervised. It felt sad because they loved each other so much, but they just had different play styles, evidenced in the following. One day I took Augie in for a supervised visit. He was on a leash, standing next to the door while I was talking to Castagna. Out of the blue, Lorraine rammed him in the ribs into the door. The look on his face was complete shock and sadness. She, meanwhile, insisted, "What? He showed me how he plays. I just showed him how I play." But Augie wouldn't look at her again and steered clear evermore. By then, though, Lorraine and Castagna were best friends. She started participating with us in the Northwood Farms horsemanship challenges each winter and fall, and had her own fan base cheering her on for the 10 years she played. Lorraine loved to go on walks and was a great walking companion for Castagna. When we lived in Carson, Lorraine lived in a pen next to Castagna, but when we moved off-grid to the outpost on the old family farm, she needed to live in the same pen with Castagna at the beginning. This was fine, except for the fact that she would just sprawl out wherever, the queen of goats she was, and sometimes that was right behind Castagna. Even though Castagna was incredibly mindful to not step on her, often even staying her foot midair, one day she did, and broke a bone in Lorraine's back right foot. I tell this part of her story because it happened 3 times over the course of her life. Same foot. Each time I tended her, kept her quiet, and she healed up good as new very quickly. It was always amazing what a resilient, good healer she was. Once I built the barn at the outpost, then Lorraine lived with the chickens and the ducks next to Castagna when they were stabled. Or she ran free with her in the pasture. They had so much fun and ran around the field together. Lorraine copied what Castagna or I was doing. If Castagna got on the pallet bridge, Lorraine wanted on it. If I got on the step stool, so did she. She loved jumping in the horse trailer, and she helped Castagna feel comfortable doing so too. Castagna played the role of sentinel and protector and took it very seriously. There were lots of predatory critters roaming about, and if they, or even stray people, ever came into the field, she ran them out for the sake of Lorraine. When we moved to the 1408 in Camas, everything remained pretty status quo. Lorraine lived and slept in the chicken area, but was out in the pasture with Castagna during the daytime. In 2020, I got a little crazy with my chicken and duck math, and ended up with 40 birds at one point. Even though the pen was big enough, the birds did not respect Lorraine's personal space, and she got sick of it. That's when she realized she could cause things to move with her horns. Throughout her life up to that point, she and I used to play a game where she would rear up at me, I would pretend rear up at her, and we'd come down and meet in the middle. She'd blow by me and we'd do it again. Never did she offer to headbutt, and it was a game we both loved. But when she had realized she could make the birds move, she also recognized others would too. Suddenly one day when we started our rear-up game, I quickly realized she wasn't playing anymore. For the next years, Lorraine had horns and knew how to use them. It was a challenging thing, but it did level up my awareness and state of being present whenever I was in her space or field. Sometimes she would dare to use them with Castagna when they were sharing hay or something, but Castagna, in her great love for Lorraine, never really reacted. She would turn away or just calm her down in her own special way. When Anjou came along, she and Lorraine played. Castagna continued with her protector role, and Anjou came in for the play. Things to know about Lorraine. She had major stranger danger. In her younger years, she would run and hide. When she became aware of her horns, it was a crapshoot whether she'd run or want to use them. She loved corn chips, cauliflower leaves, little apples, pears, grape leaves, and carrots. Sometimes. She was finicky. Sometimes she would not take a treat from your hand, it had to be put on the ground. Other times, if it was on the ground, it was no good to her. I loved the happy snorty sound like the goat version of a pig grunt she made when she got her breakfast and dinner. I also loved when I'd call her name and she'd answer with a "I'm here" goat version of a horse nicker or neigh, depending on how excited she was. Getting stroked on her cheek or a brush between her horns was always, quote-unquote, stop eating good. She hated her feet being trimmed. She appreciated a cool bath on a hot day. She was queen of the barn. We're still adjusting to life without her and miss her every day. My one and only goat, Lorraine, also known as Lorrainette, Lorena Butt, Lorraine Bobbit, Lorraine Bain, and Bana, to name a few.